Joining us now is Washington editor of The Spectator, Amber Duke. Amber, thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour. You're in Washington, D.C. at the moment. What's the reaction been like over there to the news that Donald Trump is going to be president again?
Surprisingly muted. When we chatted yesterday, I predicted that there might be riots in response to Trump victory, which some people on the ground were suggesting, and we haven't really seen that at all. There's been some pretty small protests, but really after it became clear that Vice President Kamala Harris was not going to come out last night and give her concession speech, she was going to wait until this evening. The crowds that were gathered basically just dissipated and went home, especially the crowd that was at her alma mater, Howard University. They left around midnight when they had Cedric Richmond, one of the campaign managers, come out, tell them that Kamala was not giving remarks. And then even today for her speech where she did concede to the former president, Donald Trump, it was a much smaller group than they might have expected. And so just ancillary to that, you haven't really seen protests or anything of the sort. Now, on my way home from Michigan, there were a lot of Trump fans in the airport who were incredibly excited, wearing all of their Trump merch, and were really just very happy.
Yeah, I saw a few MAGA hats out yesterday in Sydney. Look, we spoke yesterday about cry rooms being set up for students to cope with the fact that Donald Trump has got in, and therapy dogs being used. What have you heard or seen? Have they been in use?
Yeah, so we actually had one of our reporters at the Spectator, Juan P. Villasmil, go to one of the safe spaces at Georgetown University's McCourt School of Public Policy, which is a school for people who are aspiring to be at least adjacent to politics, yet apparently could not handle the results of a Democratic election. They had hot chocolate for students. They had actually printed out child therapy guides for people to express their emotions. And apparently there were quite a few students there who were quite dejected and filling out these guides and making kaleidoscopes and doing arts and crafts to apparently cope with the loss. It was really quite sad.
I think some people need to go in there and say it's going to be okay. But just looking online, here are some lefties completely freaking out that Donald Trump is going to be the next president.
I'm sorry. No! Why? Do you really hate me that bad? What the You! What the hell?
So much screaming. Did you see anything like that?
Not in person, but I think those videos are an indictment of really the mainstream media and the Democratic Party here in the U.S. They have been spending this entire election cycle accusing Trump of being divisive, accusing him of running a dark campaign. That's a headline I saw in the New York Times this morning. And Kamala Harris herself suggesting that Trump is a fascist, that he will not leave office if he takes power again. Hillary Clinton compared his rally at Madison Square Garden to a 1939 Nazi rally. And so these people are being fed with these lies from the people that they trust, the people in power. And now Kamala Harris has come out, given her concession speech, and is reassuring people that it's going to be okay. Well, which one is it? Is Trump an evil fascist who's going to destroy democracy and ruin the country? Or is everything going to be okay? Obviously, we have 4 years of Trump as a guide to know that, yeah, everything is going to be okay. In fact, it was better 4 years ago when he was in office than it is now. But a lot of people have bought into this idea that he is going to be the harbinger of doom and the demise of the United States of America.
Yeah, that's right. Just so much fear being drilled into Americans nearly everywhere you look. When you listen to Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, when you turn on CNN, MSNBC, no wonder people are so scared of him. But just some more lefties losing their minds, completely freaking out. Those who didn't want to necessarily film themselves still had to write a message on social media. And how's this really insightful message? There's a reason why educated people vote blue. What we're seeing is the uneducated population of America holding the rest of the country hostage. So it's pretty sad when you see messages like that. Of course, that was inevitable to see when there's a Donald Trump win, and that's just not going to stop people from thinking that he's the worst person in the world and this is the worst possible outcome.
Those types of messages are precisely why the Democratic Party has lost the working class coalition that makes up a bulk of the American voter base, because they talk down to them, they have contempt for them, they sneer at them. And they look at what the supposedly educated elites have brought to this country over the past 50 years, and they don't feel like their policies are benefiting them. And that's a completely valid and reasonable way to feel about the way that politics has been operating in this country. And then you also have people accusing Trump supporters of being racist, whereas he actually gained most with minority groups. He got 45% of the Latino vote in swing states. It was even higher. He outright won the Latino vote in Michigan. He also made major gains with Black voters, particularly Black men, and even flipped Osceola County in Florida, which is the county with the highest population of Puerto Ricans in the entire country. There was obviously a whole news cycle about how this Madison Square Garden joke about Puerto Rico was going to flip the election for Kamala Harris. So again, there's a lot of cognitive dissonance going on where they would rather blame anyone but themselves, and the convenient scapegoat for them is the voters. But of course, that's the fundamental problem, is that the voters are sending a message that they're not going to be belittled, talked down to, or taken for granted any longer.
Absolutely. And in your view, where did the Democrats really go wrong? I think the scare campaign around women's reproductive rights didn't help, and you can't really run an election campaign with not many policies. Her policies were vague at best, and the main one was about abortion.
Well, it goes all the way back to deciding to exercise a coup, basically, against Joe Biden as the nominee and installing Kamala Harris without a hint of a democratic process. That was really the beginning of it, because she was so unpopular in 2019. She was one of the first candidates to drop out of the Democratic primary and had an even lower approval rating than Joe Biden in what was a historically unpopular administration. So there wasn't a whole lot that she could do just to make up for those fundamentals. But talking about policy would have been a great idea for her. Instead, she intentionally kept things incredibly vague. And most importantly, she did not delineate how she would be different than Joe Biden, even saying in an interview on The View that she couldn't think of a single thing that she would have done differently than the current president. Again, when you're in an unpopular administration with people who feel 75% about a voter say that the country is on the wrong track, you have economy and immigration as the top two issues. For an incumbent, that's a death sentence.
Absolutely. Look, what's your prediction? What's going to happen with Kamala Harris's future?
If I were the Democratic Party, I would want nothing to do with her anymore. She has proven herself to be toxic. She ran a disastrous campaign, doing basically the opposite of what any normal campaign strategist would recommend for someone in her position. And again, going back to 2019, she wasn't a good candidate then either. I was kind of surprised that she was even chosen to be the vice president for Joe Biden's administration. They should run as far away from her as possible. But if her speech today was any indication, she still believes that she has a future in politics at the top levels of the Democratic Party. I would not be surprised to see her take another run at this thing in 2028. But she's going to have a lot of heavy competition there, because guess what? There's going to actually be a primary. And there's a lot of other Democrats like Josh Shapiro, Gavin Newsom, Gretchen Whitmer, who are going to be chomping at the bit to take their bite at the apple.
Absolutely. Amber Duke, Washington editor of The Spectator, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.